What it is, my 10 piece and grease here, and today we're talking arc guns and heavy weapons. Now, with the Profit Taker update, we are now able to take any arc gun and turn it into a heavy weapon. So I'm sure many of you have questions about this, and I'm going to kind of start at the beginning really quickly, so bear with me before we jump straight into it. So if you're new to the Warframe, you're probably wondering, Peace, where do I start with Archwing? Well, the best place, in my opinion, to start is going to be the quest, the Archwing. And the reason for this is because the mission is going to get you acclimated to the Archwing gear. Alright? So, in my opinion, this is the best place to start with Archwing. But let's say you've done this already and now you're looking for a specific arc gun. Where do you go to get those? And the answer is the syndicates. All these syndicates are going to have various arc gun parts. All right, if you look at Cephalon Suda, for example, you've got the Decurion receiver, the Velocitus barrel, the Corvas receiver, the Cyngas receiver, and the Fluxus barrel. Once you acquire all the parts from all the various syndicates, you now need the last part, which is the blueprint. So what you're going to do is you're actually just going to, let's see, under weapons and Archwing, you're going to say, let's say you're looking at the Corvas. Don't pay plat for it if you've already acquired the parts. Come down here to blueprint, and when you click on it, it's going to list what you need. In this case, you're going to need 45,000 credits. You're going to need the Corvus barrel, the receiver, the stock, as well as 2 Archgun crystals, and you need to factor in the blueprint, which is going to cost you 35,000 credits. But all of this is what you're going to earn in game. But once you acquire all the parts and you acquire this blueprint, it goes to your foundry and you build it. Some of the arc guns, however, the blueprint is located in the dojo. Yet another case to be made for joining a clan. Once your clan researches these arc guns, you can just simply replicate these blueprints and you get the parts, and bingo bango, still just credits again, you build it in your foundry. Just that simple. So now let's get to the meat and potatoes. I'm sure many of you are going to ask this question, which is, how do you make your arc gun a heavy weapon? Alright, well, let's start from the beginning. So you're going to need 2 things. You're going to need a Gravamag, and there are 3 ways to acquire a Gravamag, and you're going to need a arc gun deployer. Currently, there is only 1 way to acquire an arc gun deployer. So where can you go to acquire a Gravamag and an Archgun deployer in-game, just by playing the game? And the simple answer is Profit Taker. So let's see here. So here's your heavy weapon slot. What you need to do is get your standing with Solaris United up to max. Upon doing so, you can go into the back room and you can start taking the Profit Taker missions. There are 4 phases. The phase you care about is phase 3. However, you must do all of these missions in order, at least the first time. Then you can do them any order you want after that. So you want phase 3. This means for the first time you must run phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 3 is going to give you a complete Gravamag. Alright, so that's the first way to acquire a Gravamag. Upon successfully completing phase 3 also, Ordis is going to send you a message in your inbox, and it's going to contain the arc gun deployer. Do not forget to slot this in your gear wheel. If you don't slot this in your gear wheel, you have no way to summon your arc gun. Again, currently in game, this is the only way to acquire an arc gun deployer, is in phase 3 of the Profit Taker. Upon doing also phase 3 of Profit Taker, you get a Gravamag. But let's say you need more Gravamags than just 1. Maybe you're like me and you want all of your arc guns to be heavy weapons. What's another way to acquire Gravamags? Well, one way is the market. So in the market, excuse me. Let's see, components here. You can simply buy a Gravamag for 20 plat. But wait! do not make the mistake of assuming you only need a grab-a-mag. Again, you must have the Archwing deployer, which you can only, the Archgun deployer, excuse me, which you can only get from phase 3 of the Prophet-Taker. And upon doing so, you will also get a grab-a-mag. So why buy one when you get a grab-a-mag for free, along with the Archwing deployer that you need, just by running phase 3 of the Prophet-Taker? But if you've done that and you need more grab-a-mags, well, certainly you could potentially purchase a grab-a-mag for 20 plat. But the third way to acquire a grab-a-mag is in your clan dojo. Yet again, another case to be made for joining a clan. Once your clan actually researches the grab-a-mag, you can just simply replicate how many ever the blueprints you need with how many ever Archguns you want to actually make a heavy weapon, and you can just simply build them in your foundry. However, you need all 3 systems in order to build a grab-a-mag from your dojo. You need 10 gyro mags, you need 2 repeller systems, and you need 5 Atmos systems. Now, if you're running Prophet-Taker missions, believe it or not, these drop pretty often. So you could simply just buy the blueprints for the grab-a-mags if you need more after running Prophet-Taker phase 3, and just build as many as you would like. However, there is one other stipulation that I want to point out, because I already know that somebody's going to run into this trouble, because it's really kind of in the fine print, as it were. So if you're trying to install a grab-a-mag, you would simply actually hit options here, and in the same exact slot as the Auric and Catalyst, you're going to notice the grab-a-mag is present. What this means is you must have an Auric and Catalyst installed already on that Archgun before you can install the grab-a-mag. So if you have a grab-a-mag and you're having problems installing it on the Archgun, it's because you need to install an Auric and Catalyst first. And after you've done that, then you can install a grab-a-mag. Alright? So I think that that's really important to bring up. Okay. So let's talk about Archguns really quickly here. So there are currently 8 Archguns total in the game of Warframe. I don't know if more will be added later, but there are 8 total. And it's really important that you know going into this that your build for an Archgun, let's say the Corvas for example, is going to be different for a heavy weapon than it is for Archwing. The reason for this is because in Archwing, when you're using one of these Archguns, the ammo uses a charge rate. So as you use it, you have to allow it to charge back up. So you're going to use mods such as charge rate increase. However, this is completely and totally worthless when you use an Archgun on a regular mission as a heavy weapon, because when you summon an Archgun as a heavy weapon in a regular mission, you get a set amount of ammo. Alright, you cannot increase that ammo with an ammo booster, and having a charge rate for ammo mod isn't going to do you any good in a regular mission, because your ammo is a set amount. A carrier is not going to alter the amount of ammo as well. So whatever that Archwing is set at, that Archgun I should say, that heavy weapon is set at, is what you have. Once you use that ammo, it goes away and you're back to your primary, secondary, and melee weapons. Alright? So I highly recommend you have 2 different builds. One for a heavy weapon mode for that Archgun, and then one for Archwing. Alright? So I have the same exact build as a heavy weapon on all 8 of these Archguns. Alright? So let's start. We're just going to go alphabetically. Let's start with the Corvas. Alright? We'll talk about what it is, how it works, and its basic overall stats. Alright? So the overall stats for the Corvus is it has a 40% crit chance with a 2.6 crit multiplier, a 14% status chance. Alright? Now it is a charge rate weapon, meaning you have to charge it. Alright? Once we install all these mods, we have the typical mods you do for your primaries and your secondaries and your melee exist for Archguns. So you have your multi-shot mod, you have your damage mod, you have your crit damage mod, and you have your crit chance mod, and then you have your 60-60 dual stat mods. Alright, just like on a primary, secondary, and melee weapon, the Archgun works in a very similar fashion. Once we install all these mods, that bumps our crit chance up to 80% with a 4.7 crit multiplier and a 64.4 status chance. Now, over on paper, these stats seem very good. But what is the Corvas and how does it work? Well, the Corvas is kind of a flak weapon. Alright, you charge up the trigger, and once you release it, it does a flak type of blast on one enemy. And that's where the problems begin with the Corvus, because there's little to no blast radius, which doesn't make a lot of sense for a flak weapon. A flak weapon should do kind of an area of effect kind of blast if it's a flak weapon. However, the Corvus doesn't work in this fashion. It's literally more or less kind of flak damage on one target, which kind of really leaves you scratching your head, like, well, why doesn't it have blast damage, and why doesn't it have like a blast radius? I mean, if it's a flak launcher, it should, but it doesn't. So overall, the Corvus, it's okay, I guess, but overall, I'm not a fan. That brings us to the next, which is the Cyngas. Now, the Cyngas is a pulse rifle, basically. All right. So it basically has a 20% crit chance with a 2.2 crit multiplier and a 30% status chance. Now, as I said, it is a burst fire weapon. Pay particular attention to the fact that the puncture, slash, and impact are all equal, which is really kind of surprising. Once we equip all the standard mods we already did on all of our builds here, we have a 40% crit chance with a 4.0 crit multiplier, and we have a 100% status chance. All right. So what is the Cyngas and how does it work? Well, as I said, the Cyngas is a burst fire or pulse fire rifle. And for the most part, you know, it works. It's not fantastic, but it's not horrible either. Unfortunately, it's kind of just somewhere in the middle. It doesn't really do anything extremely well, but as I said, it does work overall. If you like pulse fire weapons, like say the Burst and Prime, for example, you'll probably really like the Cyngas. But this does bring up a bigger question, and I think really all Archguns can be included in this question, which is, well, why wouldn't I just use that particular weapon as a primary or secondary versus this heavy weapon? And in this case, you have to wonder, why wouldn't I just use the Tiburon Prime, for example, in Burst Fire? Why wouldn't I just use the Burst and Prime, for example, if you have a good build for it? And that's really kind of the big question that really you just have to sit here and look at this and go, I don't really see anything about this Cyngas that would make me prefer to use it over a regular primary weapon. Alright, so with that said, let's move on to the next, which is going to be the dual Decurion. Alright, so what is the dual Decurion and how does it work? Well, let's go over stats first. So stat-wise, it has a 28% crit chance with a 2.2 crit multiplier, and it has a 14% status chance. Now this is an auto rifle, auto rifles, and that's kind of where the problems begin. But I'll get to that in a moment. Once we install all these same mods as all the others, we get a 56% crit chance with a 4.0 crit multiplier and a 64.4% status chance. Okay. The dual Decurion, first of all, is an auto rifle, but you have two of them, one in each hand. All right. But it shoots like you're just using one. It doesn't feel like you're running around with dual auto rifles, one in each hand. And automatically you think, oh, wait, I have two auto rifles, one in each hand. I'm just going to rain down hell on all my enemies. Yeah, not so much. It just, when you're shooting it, it feels like you're just shooting one. It's almost like one of the weapons is just a backup that you don't actually use. I mean, it's okay, question mark. Definitely, as far as auto rifles goes, this pretty much pales in comparison to all the others, which is going to consist of the Phaedra and the Imperator Vandal, for example, which I'll get to those in a moment. So yeah, and then of course on top of this, the dual Decurion, your character runs around like he or she is dragging them, and he or she can't pick them up. So the character animation is really goopy with these because, and it doesn't make sense, especially considering you install a Gravamag supposedly to prevent this and allow you to actually handle them in a regular atmosphere. So again, more head scratching here. So let's move on to the next one. And that brings us to the Fluxus. Now the Fluxus, I'm going to put it to you. Let's go over the stats and then I'll get to my point here. Alright, so no, it's not going to show me the stats here. Okay. So crit chance is 22%, crit multiplier is 2.0, and status is 16%. Slash is king on this weapon. You're looking at 25 on puncture, 50 on impact, and 175 on slash. Your interest should be piqued on that, but let's get into this a little bit more, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. With all the same mods, we have a 66% crit chance, 5.2 crit multiplier, and a 90.7 status chance. Again, with all that slash. This is definitely, in my mind, a candidate to experiment with Zodiac Shred, which is going to bump slash up to an additional 90%. But that's something I'll have to do later. So what is the Fluxus and how does it work? The Fluxus, I'll put it to you like this. If you like the Archaplasmor, or if you like the Catch Moon style of kit gun for your secondary, you'll probably love the Fluxus, because the Fluxus shoots this large, like, band, this just huge spread of plasma that just decimates a lot of stuff, and it works extremely well. So yeah, as far as this has been one of my favorites from the get-go, and it really hasn't changed to date. So let's talk about the next one, which is going to be the Rattler. Now my buddy Drift absolutely loves this thing, and stat-wise, you look at it and go, yeah, I can see that. But basically, you're looking at a 25% crit chance with a 2.0 crit multiplier and a 25% status chance. All right. Now it does have inherent blast damage. So we install all these mods, we bump blast up even further, and we end up with a 50% crit chance and a 3.6 crit multiplier and a 95.2 status chance. All right. So what is the Rattler and how does it work? Well, basically it is essentially an auto fire like cannon that has a blast radius with each one of its shots, and they're a very significant amount of blast radius. Like if you have a bright energy color, just like with the Fluxus, on the Rattler, sometimes it gets really hard to see because there's so much going on. Furthermore, something to keep in mind, the Rattler does self-damage. It literally only takes one shot, two shots to down you. So be aware of that, because if you shoot an enemy that's close to you or some sort of obstacle that's close to you, you're going to be downed. So that's something that's very important to keep in mind with the Rattler. All those things said, though, you know, the Rattler, it's okay. It works. If that's your type of gun that you like, oh yeah, then by all means, give it a go, because I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. But myself, it's not really my style of gun, so yeah, I'm kind of just lukewarm on it for the most part. Let's get to the next weapon, and that's the Imperator Vandal. Now the Imperator Vandal is just a basic all-around auto rifle, is the best way to look at it. So you're looking at a 28% crit chance with a 2.4 crit multiplier and a 12% status chance. Now, the funny thing about this is when you see the stats with all of this, the same mods as all the rest of these Archguns, you look at the crit chance of 56% with a 4.3 crit multiplier and a 56.8% status chance. You see those stats and you think, meh. We've seen Archguns that already have better crit chance and better status chance, and sometimes some of them even better crit and status. So you automatically may dismiss the Imperator Vandal, but don't, because for some reason The Imperator Vandal may not look as good on paper, but in practice, it is great. So don't skip this one just because you think the stats on paper aren't that appealing, because it does work extremely well. In fact, extremely better than several of the other Archguns that I've already listed, with better stats, surprisingly. So the Imperator Vandal, if you're wondering why did I just talk about the Imperator Vandal and not the Imperator, because the Imperator Vandal and Imperator are still so similar, there's just really negligible difference. For example, the Imperator Vandal has a higher fire rate, it has a bigger mag size, and it has a faster ammo regen, which the ammo regen is not going to affect you as a heavy weapon. It just does not play a part. All right. But yeah, Imperator Vandal, straight up auto rifle, and it works very well. So the next one we're talking about is the Phaedra, which is very similar in practice to the Imperator Vandal, in that it's an auto rifle, straight up auto rifle. So you're looking at a 14% crit chance with a 2.0 crit multiplier and a 30% status chance. So again, on paper, you may dismiss this one, but don't be so quick to do so. Equipping all these mods gives you a 28% crit chance with a 3.6 crit multiplier and 100% status. Now, the Phaedra is described as the Soma's big sister. So if you are a fan of the Soma and or Soma Prime, the Phaedra is your Archgun. It is pretty doggone good. Again, you may dismiss it because of only that 28% crit chance, but give it a try. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. It does work well. That brings us to the last one, which is the Velocitus. All right, where do I start with the Velocitus? Let's get to the stats, and then we'll go from there. So the crit chance is 30%, 3.0 crit multiplier, and 25% status chance, and it does have a charge trigger. Okay, when you equip all these mods, it has a 60% crit chance with a 5.4 crit multiplier, and it has a 95.2 status chance, and it does also have 5.0 punch through, which is pretty significant. The Velocitus does have inherent magnetic damage, so once you start modding for, say, blast or corrosive, you now have blast, corrosive, and magnetic. 3 different types of status effects. So yeah, that's pretty, again, on paper this sounds fantastic. However, there are quite a few problems with this, at least for me anyway. So the Velocitus is a heavy weapon that's designed for one shot, one enemy. That's my biggest problem with a heavy weapon is you're only taking out one enemy. Unless you can get all the enemies to line up. Which, yeah, good luck with that. Overall, the Velocitus is just not that impressive. However, at least it's not that impressive to me. If you are a fan of the Opticore, if you are a fan of the Lanka, where you don't mind about the charge trigger, you don't mind about the one-shot, one-enemy type of layout, you'll probably really like the Velocitus. Because you know what? It does work well for that. You aim at that one enemy, and you charge up the shot, and you send it. And you deal good amount of damage. It has great crit, it has great status, and it has inherent magnetics, so you're just adding to it. So, yeah, again, this is going to be for those players that specifically, as I've already said, like the Opticore and like the Lanka style of weapons. And keep in mind the shots with the Velocitus do have travel time as well. So there are several similarities with those types. But for me personally, it's just not my cup of tea. All right, so that's a breakdown of all of the Archguns. Now, I know this video is getting a little bit long, but I'm going to go ahead and show you in the simulacrum how these work so that you can better make up your mind. And I think that that's a really good route to go, because I don't think just telling you the stats on these is enough unless you actually see them at work. I think that that's really important. So we'll jump into it. And by the way, if you're new to Warframe and you're wondering how you get a simulacrum key so you can get into the simulacrum, the same location that I'm going right now, definitely check out Cephalon Samaris on any relay. And once you save up enough standing, you can buy it and you can test frame builds, you can test weapons, you can test Archguns, as I'm doing here, and you can kind of see for yourself. I will say my biggest problem with the Archguns, though, is they don't have enough impact. That's really kind of my biggest problem with them. Alright, so let's summon. We're going to summon 3 level 160 gunners. Alright. Wow, the simulate took a second there. Maybe because I first got in here. Okay. So, I think I already have the Corvas equipped. I did. Make sure I have the same build across all weapons. I'm pretty sure I do, but... Whoa. Simulacrum is not wanting to load today. Okay. So, select the Archgun deployer, and there is the Archgun. As I said, the Corvus is supposed to be a flak weapon, but it doesn't deal damage to you. It is more, I think the best way to describe it would be like a shotgun more than a flak cannon. Because a flak cannon kind of insinuates that it's going to do kind of a blast damage. And that's certainly not what the Corvus does. It is really just kind of like a charged shotgun is the best way to describe it. As you can tell, I'm putting a lot of shots into these 160s. And it's not really performing that well. And again, in this case, I have to ask a question. If I use the Tigris Prime, they'd be dead already. So if we're comparing the Corvus to a shotgun, yeah, with the Tigris they'd be dead. So why would I even need this as a heavy weapon? So yeah. Let's call up the next Archgun so you guys can see it in action as well. And this time it's going to be the Cyngas, which is the pulse rifle or the burst rifle. Now, to be fair, I'll drop these enemies and simulate 3 more. Again, if you like a burst fire rifle, then you know the Cyngas has potential for you. Alright, let's move on to the next one. So you guys can see it in action as well. And this time it's going to be the dual Decurion. And I'll kind of show you the character animation I was referring to earlier. Alright. Alright, so these are the dual Decurion. These are just kind of dual auto rifles. If you notice the way the character animation is, where they run kind of dragging it, it's just kind of... It leaves you scratching your head going, well, why did I need a Gravamag if I can't hold them up? Because the whole idea of a Gravamag is to prevent this in a normal atmosphere. So you're kind of... the whole animation is just kind of weird looking. It almost reminds me of like a T-Rex. I have little arms. I don't know. Anyway. So let's go ahead and simulate 3 more 160s. And I think you'll see really quickly that it looks and sounds and feels like you're shooting one auto rifle versus two. It just, I don't think that it really, I think this is overall the main problem with all these Archguns. They just don't have enough impact. I think that it needs to be better. I mean, as you saw, this is comparable for the most part to the Cyngas, the pulse rifle. Overall, though, if I had to go an auto rifle, the other two auto rifles are far better, the Phaedra and the Imperator Vandal. I'd be hard-pressed to suggest this one over those two, because you'll see shortly they do a much better job. So yeah, and then he'll go back to dragging them at his side again, which I don't get it. Okay. So next we have the Fluxus, and as I told you earlier, the Fluxus is easily one of my favorites. Easily. And if you love the Archoplasmor, oh yes, you will like the Fluxus. And the Fluxus works equally as good in Archwing and as a heavy weapon. So, and you can kind of see this huge wave of plasma energy and all that slash. Look at these slash ticks. Yeah. This to say, I think the Fluxus, just like with all the Archguns, need a buff to really make them feel like a heavy weapon. But of all of them, I would have to say that the the Fluxus gives me that kind of Archgun feel more than any. So there you go. Fluxus works extremely well. And in that Koopa Fortress spy mission, where you have to go underwater, oh, the Fluxus is your best friend in that case. Because the Fluxus, its energy wave can actually go through obstacles. So, yeah. So now we have the Rattler. Now my buddy Drift, he loves this thing. Me, I'm not so much. I mean, the stats look fantastic on it, but keep in mind the Rattler, it can very easily down you because it can self-damage. Again, I mean, it works if you like these types of weapons. Me personally, I'm just not that impressed with it in general. And then, of course, we get into the whole conundrum of weapons that can down you. Are they more of a hindrance than a boon? And I think that's a valid question. If you have a tendency to down yourself quite a bit with self-damaging weapons, this may not be the weapon for you. But, you know, Rattler, it works. If it's your cup of tea, go crazy. Next, we have the Imperator Vandal. Now, the Imperator Vandal is the one that I suggested. On paper, it doesn't look as good as the others. It just doesn't. However, in practice, it actually works surprisingly well. Alright. Let's call up the old Imp Vandal. It kind of, to me, epitomizes the whole idea of a auto rifle for the most part. Yeah. So, if you like auto rifles, give the Imperator Vandal a look. It works really well. Next up is the Phaedra. Now the Phaedra is described as the Soma Prime's big sis. So obviously, if you like the Soma, if you like the Soma Prime, if you like auto rifles, it's kind of a toss-up. Really kind of up to you whether you go with the Imperator Vandal or you go with the Phaedra. Both work extremely well. Again, these are 3 160 heavy gunners, so it's not as if they are punks. And last but not least, we have the Velocitus. Now, again, you would think a weapon with a good amount of punch through and a charged shot should be able to deal a significant amount of damage. And I think you're going to see it pretty quickly. Ugh. Can't believe I did that. Well, maybe it'll help the Velocitus. Although, I don't think it will help the Velocitus, unfortunately. As you can see here, I'm pumping charged shots into these guys, and it's just 3 hours later. Again, you know, it could be that there's some sort of specialty build that's needed for it to get it to actually work. I think for those players that really like this style of gun, yeah, you know, I think there may be potential if you're a fan of the optic war. Here you go. Make it work, I guess. Now, I'm not charging those shots. I'm showing that you can go without charging them if you want to. Alright, are they finally gone? Whew. Maybe one fell off the map. But yeah, there you go. So you've got travel time, you've got a charge. Yeah, definitely not what I personally look for in a heavy gun. But there you go. Now, DE has said they are planning on releasing ribbons for Archguns, and I think this could completely change the game and give some of these Archguns that impact or those kind of changes that are needed. So, but let me know down in the comment section below which one of these Archguns seems most appealing to you. And until next time, peace and grease.